I want schools and school associations to be vigilant, to fight government bureaucracy when they come in and start trying to take control. Yep. And we need to sue. We need to do whatever it takes to maintain our ability to teach biblical truth at all costs.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Welcome back. It's time for another episode right here on the Teacher Edition podcast. I hope your semester is off to a great start, that you're getting settled into your routine. Thank you so much for making Teacher Edition part of your routine, by the way. I know schedules can be really funny over break and getting back into routine. I get it. By the way, if you missed any of the episodes over the past month with all the breaks and holidays and everything, please make sure to go back and catch those. We had some great guests. We covered some fantastic topics, even over the holidays. As a reminder, you can find those episodes on our website, teachereditionpodcast.com. The whole library of episodes is there, along with notes about each one and any resources that were shared as well. You can also find us on social media, on Instagram and TikTok, we're Teacher Edition Pod, and on Facebook and YouTube, by the way, we are Teacher Edition Podcast. Don't let those episodes slip by. There's just some great content, but also some great challenges and encouragement as well, so go check those out. So when we launched this podcast back in 2023, one of our very first guests on the show was Jeff Keaton. Jeff is the founder and CEO of RenewaNation, and he has been a church planter and a school planter. He has dedicated his life to impacting the next generation for Christ. And in that burden, he really works to awaken parents and church leaders and schools as well to that need to give young people a biblical worldview. So he joined us again on the show in November of 2024 to introduce us to his new book, and I'm excited to welcome him back to the show again today. No doubt many of you as listeners joining us, you've heard Jeff speak before, maybe at a conference or even at your church. I am always so impacted by Jeff's passion for this generation and for our homes and for our Christian schools. So it's a treat each time I cross paths with him and his wife as well. Jeff, it's so great to have you back on the show. It's been a while, and I'm really excited to catch up today.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and I love coming on this show. You do a great job. You know, you've turned into a total professional in 2 years. I'm sitting here going, I'm listening to this amazing lady here. She's got a radio voice now. It's great to be back with you.
You're very, very kind. Okay, so as I mentioned, the last time you joined us, you were just rolling out your new book, and I believe it's entitled Saving Our Children in a World Gone Crazy, if I remember right. So from what I hear, that book is going great. It's getting out there. And by the way, congratulations on your book. That is such an accomplishment. So now it's been, 12 months, a little more than 12 months. And I wonder if we could just start there. So look back over those 12 months or so. What response have you seen to the book? Do you feel like you've been able to get it out there? I know you're trying to get it into the hands of so many. Do you feel like you've been able to do that?
Well, God has blessed us. It's now in the hands of almost 40,000 families in the first 12 months. So praise
Amazing.
God for that.
Yes.
And we are having some phenomenal responses. Probably one of the most dramatic I got just a few weeks ago from a lady in Texas. And she had picked up one of the books. My sister, Kim Collingsworth, they have been passing them out all across America to families.
Wow.
And she picked up one at a Collingsworth concert. And she wrote this beautiful email to our office. And she said, we just got a book at the Collingsworth concert. And she titled it, Saving Our Children in a World Gone Crazy. And she said, I just wanted to tell you how God has used it in our life. She said, my husband and I are both basically executives in corporations. And she said, we have been struggling desperately with our children, our family, because we felt like internally we were outside of God's good design, that I wasn't taking enough time with our children. And she said, we read the section, she named the chapter 24, where it said, we have sold our souls to the American dream. And she said, wow. She said, God spoke to us so boldly through that chapter that I determined to quit my job and take 50% less pay for our family so that I can invest in my children while they're young, et cetera. So not
Amazing.
recommending
Praise
no
the
woman
Lord.
can work or
Wow.
anything, but I mean, that
Yeah.
stuff's incredible. And then I ended up following up and having, I did a Google Meet with Sarah. Her name's Sarah Bray. And we just had a tremendous talk. She's an excellent communications expert. So I said, hey, don't want you working full time if that's not what the Lord wants you to do, but you need to work for RenewaNation a little bit.
There you
So
go. There you go. How
I
about
can
that?
tell you story after story of how God's using it, and it's exciting. So praise God for that.
That is fantastic. Great to hear. So each time we talk, I really like getting your take, like your update from the field. You're on the go a lot. You spend a lot of time traveling the country. You're speaking at schools. You're speaking at conferences. So let's get our update. So what's your sense of how things are going? Let's talk about Christian education specifically.
Yeah.
What are you seeing there?
So before I do that, and those who are listening can't see this, but I got to show you this thing. This is, what do
Oh,
you think this is?
wow.
What do you think that is?
It looks like an oar.
It's a paddle from a Christian
Oh,
school.
oh, whoa.
No, I
Wow.
just saw that today when I was getting ready for this. So that is the actual paddle from the first Christian school I ever attended in 1976. And all I can say is there's a lot of kids' names on there signed, and my name is on there. My siblings, several of them. We must have been paddled to that paddle. So Christian education at its best in 1976, wearing kids out.
Oh, my word. Yeah, we probably won't hang that one on the wall.
I tell you what, I actually keep it in my office. I love it. What happened was that Christian school lasted. My dad launched that school and lasted for 35 years. And then a couple years ago, I went down there and I went into the school building, and it was very run down, but I saw that paddle. And so I asked somebody associated with that church, is there any way I could get that? And they sent it to me. They literally wrapped it up
No
and
kidding.
sent it to me. So anyhow, that has nothing to do with
There
what your
wasn't a line
question
for
was.
it, obviously.
Yeah. But I just thought, man, I got to show these folks this paddle, anybody that's watching it. So thank God for it. It probably kept me on the straight and narrow. And now, I'm doing okay. So your question, what's happening out there in the landscape of Christian education? So from my perspective, which I had the busiest fall ever in my history ever, this just past fall, I was all over the country. What I see happening is, we had the massive spike in enrollment, et cetera, right after COVID, from COVID forward.
Yeah.
And I'd say that big spike lasted 3 years, a solid 3 years. I'm not saying we're having a nosedive now, but what I'm hearing is we're kind of leveling off. And I've seen schools go from 200 and something to 900, okay, in 5 years,
Wow.
something like
Wow.
that. So that's massive, overwhelming growth.
How do you even manage that?
Yeah,
Wow.
and the other thing that happened was, we brought in, hundreds of kids from non-Christian schools. And so what's happening is they're going back to, okay, thank God for the growth. We're all thrilled about the growth. But they're kind of plateauing, they're leveling off, and some of them are seeing just a small decrease in the last. This is what I'm hearing consistently out there, that we peaked, we've settled, and we're just decreasing just a hair because all of a sudden they've decided they're going to go back and focus on culture rather than just growth. And the pendulum swings, one way or the other, and it always goes a little far on. And so I think that what I'm seeing is great. There's great, strength out there, especially because of the school choice programs and stuff. There's probably more income in Christian schools now. A lot of them were able to raise their tuition, raise their teachers' pay. I know I just did an annual fund dinner for a school, and they were able to double their income because of school choice in like 1 year. So thankfully, they were able to really increase their teacher pay and really offer better services. So that's really good stuff. But now we're facing some of the challenges, you might say, of that massive growth.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that because you've been in Christian education for some time. You've seen a lot. You're in the trenches, seeing what's going on in these schools. We talked about, like you said, what you're seeing currently, but I wondered your take on, what's coming as you look down the next 10 years or so of Christian education and this movement in America. What do you think are going to be some of the challenges? And some of those I think are starting to show themselves, like you just mentioned.
Absolutely. So I've been summing it up using 3 phrases, basically. Secularized parents are a challenge. Secularized teachers. We're having wonderful Christians come out of public education by the thousands into Christian schools. They're beautiful people. They love the Lord. They're so thrilled they can talk about Jesus openly now. but many of them do not have a biblical worldview.
Right.
And so we're seeing that challenge. As a matter of fact, I went to a school, gave a few speeches, got an email a few days later from a fifth grade teacher who said, "Man, I really liked your speeches, but you are totally confused on gender." She said, "There are many different genders, not just two."
This is
And
Christian
that
school.
was a totally Christian school. And so that's been over a year ago, and I've sent that lady 2 books, articles. She wrote a big, long, email to us, and we responded to that email point by point. So anyhow, we're having teachers, who are coming from secularized education, and they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. Okay. So that's going to be a challenge. So secularized parents, secularized teachers. And the third thing is government funding. We now have 17 states, the last I checked, that, have full school choice. So it's glorious and it's dangerous, because we absolutely know that in the long run, whatever the government funds, it's going to have say in. And so I have friends on both sides of this issue. Some are teetotalers, are like, we're not taking a dime of government money. Others are like, we're going to take advantage of it. And so I'm somewhere in the middle on both of those. But yeah, that's the 3 things I see that are most challenging. And maybe we can dig into those a little deeper.
Yeah. I want to do that if we could, to just loop back a little bit and unpack them, because I think as educators, we often get our heads down. We get so focused on getting through today or getting through this week. And it's just really good to, take a few minutes, look big picture. So you mentioned secularized parents. Well, obviously parents are vital to the Christian school. We're partners with them. But they are also our customers. And just being blunt, I mean, they do pay the bills. If they don't come, we don't have customers, and then we struggle to exist. We want them to come. We want them to be pleased. But how do we handle that secularized element you mentioned? They want
Yes.
to be there, but maybe they want it a little different than the way we do it. How do you recommend schools, what do they do to offset that influx of, as you call it, secularized parents who are really pushing to influence the direction of the school? What do you think?
Right. And I think this is a critical issue right now for Christian education. Like I said, culture, school culture. Are you going to have a Christian school, or are you going to have something less than that? And I think the quickest thing to change culture are parents who do not, share the values of the school. So what I've been recommending is, number one, in order to maintain your culture and not lose control, to secularized parents who might be good people, might be Christians. They're there for,
Sure, right.
Unfortunately, a lot of them are not there for all the right reasons. You might say, they know it's a better education. They know it's safer. They know they don't have to worry about transgenderism, which
Right.
a lot of them came
Great
out
alternative.
because of the big issues, but
Yeah.
they don't understand the fundamental issues that separate Christian education from, non-Christian education. So I've been saying to schools, you've got to establish clear standards and convictions that you refuse to compromise as a school. So what shocks me is how many schools and heads of schools I've talked to. I talked to one head of school, and I think this guy's a great guy, but it shocked me. He said, "Well, I have this one homosexual young man in our school." That's what he said. He said he's a known homosexual. He wasn't dressing like a woman or anything. He said, and he's tried out for the cheerleading squad. And
Oh.
we're having a hard time deciding, what ought to do with that. And so, I mean, this guy's a great guy, and he's a conservative who stepped into a large school setting that isn't as conservative. Okay, he knows what he would do, but he was facing pressure, I guess, to let this kid, do. Again, I'm not going to go into all this stuff, but he wasn't
Sure.
going to be one of the cheerleaders that's throwing girls in the air. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yep.
And he actually was kind enough to call me and say, "Well, Jeff, I need help here," and this kind of thing. So on that setting, I said, well, first of all, I wouldn't let a practicing homosexual attend my school. I mean, I'm not going to, if they're going to say that out loud, they're not going to be in my student body. As much as I love them, I'm not I don't hate anybody. So to me, that's the kind of thing that we're facing a lot of. But we have to draw lines in the sand and say, no, this is what the Bible says. This is what we accept. We're not hateful. We love every human being, but in this school. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is these schools have to be willing to lose families who refuse to bring value to their school or resist the core principles of the school.
Right.
I think and that's what I'm seeing lately. What I've been told by some of the schools whose attendance has dropped off, we're talking schools of 900 who are now down to maybe, if they were running 800 at peak, they're down to 780, 760.
Mm.
They're seeing,
Right.
and here's what they told them: we're calling, we're kind of calling the herd. You might say that's a bad way to put it, probably, but they said we're just tightening the standards,
Right.
and letting some families go who are just not a great fit.
Sure.
And we love to be liked. We love the tuition that comes,
That's right.
from these kids. In this day, I'm Mr. Mercy. When I was running, when I was the pastor and had a school, I was the last guy to ever expel anybody. Matter of fact, I made them go through me before they ever could do it. However, I remember one time we built a new high school building. I think we added about 75 new high schoolers from the public school in like 1 year.
Wow.
And I remember the day my daughter came up to my office, my daughter was in high school, and she said, "We don't even have a Christian school anymore." I said, "What?" I mean, it shocked me. She said, "No, Dad, they're cursing. All our kids are cursing nonstop up and down the hallways." So I called my school administrator and I said, "What's going on back there?" And she said, "Well, you're Mr. Generous in letting everybody in. And you said, we got a brand new school building, we got to fill this thing up." And I did. And she said, "We've got some really tough kids." I said, "Do you have any of them who should be expelled? And you would have expelled them if it wasn't for me." She said, "Yes, I have 6 of them." I said, "You have them documented that, they should?" "Yes, they're all, their troubles are documented." I said, "Go kick them all out today." And I said, "Call an assembly for the high school middle and high school tomorrow." And she did. And I stood up before them. I said, "Look around you. There are 6 kids missing today, and you will be missing tomorrow if you think you're going to curse in our hallways." And I said, "This is a Christian school. You want to curse? Go back to your public school. They may let you do that. We will never." And I remember my teachers were like, "Jeff, whatever you did, man, it was like that place changed in a moment."
A revival.
So I had that experience years ago. It with rapid growth, but there's just tons of schools having rapid growth now. And then the third element when it comes to secularized parents is they've got to find a way to disciple and train parents so that they fully understand the mission and purpose of Christian education. This is what I've been saying for a long time to schools. We have too many parents, again, who are not there for the right reasons because they've never been trained. They don't understand what the difference between a biblical worldview education is and a secularized worldview education is. The core reasons why Christian education is so much better. And so, people are working hard at this. I talk to people all the time. And so it's one of the reasons I literally wrote my book, Saving Our Children, a World Gone Crazy. I just did an annual fund dinner out in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, my last major event of the year, speaking event. And they bought 225 copies of my new book to give to every person in attendance.
That's fantastic.
And schools are doing that. And I'm getting ready to go speak at a school of 1,100 kids. They bought a whole bunch of books at the beginning of the year to pass out on parent night when they brought them in. So I'm not just trying to do a sales pitch for my book, but it literally, this core piece of my book makes the case for that.
Right.
Why biblical worldview education is so important and how different it is from secularized. So I think they're going to have to really focus on their parents, be super intentional about it. And they won't win them all, but they can win some of them. And the kids are going to benefit in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that was secularized parents, but you also mentioned secularized teachers, and that's interesting. Secularized teachers in Christian schools.
Yes.
And of course, it's easy for our minds to only go to those who are coming to Christian education from public education, because you mentioned those. We get that. We'll talk about that, or from other fields. But I'm afraid that some of them may fall into this category. I'm guessing there are a large number of teachers who are in and who have been in Christian education that could be included in what you just said as secularized teachers. Talk with us about that. And what do you recommend that schools do to help those teachers become, I guess we could say, truly Christian or biblical worldview teachers? Where do they start?
Yeah, it's a big job. And you hit the nail on the head when you said it's not just teachers coming out of public education. I focus on that because we've had thousands of them transfer. And they haven't mostly been trained to teach biblically, but you're so right. I go to Christian schools and find people who've been there for 20, 30 years who are still really not connecting all of God's thoughts to all of the subjects that they're teaching. Or as many as God thoughts as possible. So here's what I'm recommending. First of all, I think the vetting process for hiring teachers has got to go to a new level. Again, the lady who wrote me and said that I didn't understand gender. Okay, somebody didn't vet her.
Right.
I like that Christian school I went to. It was a very large one, and I liked the people there, and I think the head of school is a great person. And I don't think he would agree with it. And to be honest with you, I've given a lot of mercy. I have chosen to send her books, send her stuff to read before I tell him. I want to try to get her to change her mind before I get her kicked out of that school, because I'm afraid if I go tell the head of school, he's going to remove her,
Sure.
and he should if she's not going to change her understanding on that, if she's not going to embrace truth. So there's lots of ways to vet people. But one of the things that, and I'm, again, it sounds like I'm trying to do a sales pitch, but this is what we use, and a lot of schools are using this now, is the viewfinder that we have. It's 30 moral dilemmas with 4 potential solutions for each moral dilemma. And it's not absolutely comprehensive, but I'll tell you what, it screens people on the issues of LGBTQ and stuff like that. One of the things I've heard from other schools is that they hired teachers recently and then didn't know it, but they were in the classroom just saying things like, well, personally, I'm not opposed to LGBTQ or this or that,
Right.
and the other, or maybe they were just kind of like real soft on the issue. Well,
Sure.
some people kind of that way. And so, if we're not screening people and vetting new people coming in, we're going to have people get in there who just, I know how desperate we get, when we're Christian schools, we
Sure.
need teachers. If they come in and say, I love the Lord, I want to teach in a Christian school, it's hard not to hire them. But if we
Right.
don't do the right vetting. So anyhow, the viewfinder is available on our website if anybody's interested in that. I think we've got to require reading and training and let them know up front that in the first couple of years, if they haven't had much biblical worldview training, that is going to be somewhat extensive. I think every Christian school should have a few key books that every new teacher should have to read, and the older teachers if they haven't, because I just, you can do some training, and obviously I'm totally into training. I do it all the time, and you guys do it all the time, and we must do that. I'm big on that. But at the same time, if they're not studying outside of the classroom, if they're not growing and developing their
Right.
own understanding of biblical worldview, they're not going to have an overflow of it.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so
Gotta
that's why
marinate
I'm
in it.
really saying, and there's some people on our team and probably your team that could give them a few books that would be very super helpful. One of the coolest things we've done lately, and it's just rolling out in January, is a thing called our Seed program. And what it is it's a monthly lesson that is to be given by local school facilitators. We're not teaching it, but it's what it means to teach Christianly or biblically. And it's like for a monthly teachers session, So,
Great.
but head of school or head of curriculum and development or somebody or a principal can take this, and it's being beautifully done. So that's something new that RenewaNation is rolling out right now. So you guys have all kinds of training tools. So I think that's it. Make sure that, again, reading worldview books that I like to say, read worldview books that are addressing more than just education.
Right.
Because you need to understand all of God's world,
Right.
And so if
And
you're
it's all
bold
feeding
enough,
into the classroom. Yep.
yeah, if you're bold enough, go back and read Francis Schaeffer, start reading him. I love anything Colson has written. I love Nancy Pearcey. If these guys haven't read Nancy Pearcey, she's fantastic on the broader worldview stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I read and have read. I don't have time to go into all of it. And then, to be honest with you, the reason, and people have heard me say this in my speeches, the reason why I love the BJU textbooks so much is because I actually think they show in real time inside those textbooks what biblical worldview thinking, teaching, immersion actually looks like, connected right to whatever subject they're teaching.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, you guys have got your biblical worldview textbook called that and other things like that, and those are phenomenal. But just the fact, because the question we get when we're out speaking is, well, how do you do this in math? How do you do this in, science a little bit more understandable, but how do you do this in
Math takes the
history?
hit. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, and honestly, I 100% recommend BJU textbooks, but I've been in some schools lately that haven't started using Christian textbooks yet. It kind of blows my mind, but I'm honored that the Lord has given me a platform there. And so here's kind of how I seed this. I say, look, I recognize you're not using Christian textbooks right now. But here's what to start. All of you guys ought to go buy the teacher edition from BJU Press for your subject and start looking at that, because if you really want to know what this looks like, that will help you. Now, I'm not saying that's what they should where they should stop. I'm just saying that, to me, some of them have no clue where to start. So,
can highlight that difference.
Yeah. And then just, conferences, training. You guys got the Exchange Conference, which I'm going to be speaking at, by the way, I think this coming year.
Great.
Figured that out. And there's so many wonderful opportunities to train a biblical worldview, but you've got to be super intentional with teachers. Otherwise, you're not going to have biblical teaching going on in your classrooms.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the third challenge that you mentioned for Christian schools that you see here on the horizon, or even now, is government funding. So something we have all heard about over the past few months is the big, beautiful bill. So I wondered, what insights do you have on that federal tax credit that was passed as part of that? Any insights there?
Yeah, let me just back up just for a second and talk about government funding again in general.
Okay.
So I think it's, like I said earlier, 17 states now have full school choice bills. And it's amazing in some ways. I do have a friend, an organization that's promoting a book called From Shekels to Shackles, and their death on Christian schools taking any money from the government. So here's where I land on that. And some people who are listening to this are going to love me. Some people are going to hate me. That's fine. I actually agree that someday, if the leftists gain control of all of these states, that they will start micromanaging Christian education using the money. Okay, I actually believe that. However, I think we have a window of opportunity. Probably there are some states, there's no way they're getting this out of their state for 20 years because they have supermajorities in House, Senate, governorship. They could never get, and they've got 100, 200, 300,000 like Florida. Hundreds of thousands of kids are now benefiting. About 10 years ago, they talked about killing the tax credit bill Florida had, and this was 10 years ago or so. 10,000 parents and students showed up on the Capitol steps. Well, now today it'd be 500,000. Okay,
right.
So I don't think they're going to be able to kill it.
No, I don't think so.
But I do. The reason I bring it up, some people say, "Why do you bring this up?" First of all, the reason I'm willing to take the risk, I think we might be able to train 20 million children in the next 20 years, and if we can do that with a biblical worldview, I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm going to take it. I'm not going to sit back and be a purist and say, well, since they might tell us what we can or cannot teach in the future, I'm not going to teach anybody now. I'm not going to do that. At the same time, I keep raising this issue because I want schools and school associations to be vigilant, to fight government bureaucracy when they come in and start trying to take control. Yep. And we need to sue. We need to do whatever it takes to maintain our ability to teach biblical truth at all cost. So I keep saying that. Some people say, well, Jeff, that's double standard here. You're for it on one side and scared about it on the other. No, it's just the complexity of where we're at in this world. I'm not trying to be hypocritical about it, truly.
Sure.
But then to the federal tax credit situation. Trump kind of put in this bill. We were being told probably weeks before the bill was passed that there's no chance we're getting a school choice bill in there this year. And then all of a sudden, when it was said and done, we got it. So we are going all in on this. We're a scholarship granting organization now in Virginia and Kansas. We're writing checks for about 1,000 kids a year to help them go to Christian schools.
Fantastic.
But I'm telling you, with this bill, and let me just, for your audience, maybe heads of schools are listening to this, maybe they haven't gotten up to speed on it. I'm going to give you my layman's understanding of it right now. We've literally hired a full-time person who's doing nothing but chasing down every state, everything right now, okay? Because we have some partners that are very, very large, and they're going 100% in with us, okay? They want us to be a major national scholarship granting organization. But what we know about it right now is that any person in America who pays federal taxes will be able to give up to $1,700 to a scholarship granting organization such as RenewaNation, and there will be plenty of others. We only receive 10% of that, $170 for each gift, a $1,700 gift. And then we take $1,530 and write checks for kids to go to Christian school. Now, each state the governor has to choose to opt into this program. Okay. So we know probably California won't do it. Oregon, Washington, they won't do it. But donors in all of those states can still give and get that pure tax credit. It's not a deduction. It's a 100% credit. So
Wow.
if you give
Wow.
$1,700 to scholarship granting organization, you'll get that $1,700 back from your taxes. Okay.
Wow.
So we've never had an opportunity on a federal level like this. Our dream at RenewaNation is, the reason we're going all in is we're going to be raising money from donors in all 50 states likely. Okay. And then we're going to take those funds. And then when a community approaches us about launching a school, it's possible that we'll be able to say, I'll tell you what, we'll pay the tuition for the first 100 kids for your first year or two because we have this ability.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very big. It's going to be, I think, a great benefit to Christian schools. And it's the first, to my knowledge, federal tax credit for private education ever in history. So again, here comes the government money. We're going to use it for the glory of God to launch a ton of new schools, to help existing schools. Hopefully, we'll be able to use it to get teacher pay up, and be able to provide more services through our Christian schools, especially when it comes to children, in the areas of special needs. That's a big challenge we hear all the time. I have families approach me at the end of a speech and say, man, here's my child, but they're autistic, they're this, and I want to get them in a Christian school, but they can't meet the needs of my child. I'm hoping through some of this, we'll be able to help fund some of those kinds of programs so Christian education can be more holistic. But yeah, that's kind of what's happening. And it's really big. It doesn't start until January 1st, 2027. But we're hiring right now, ramping up for it. I actually got a big trip to Phoenix next week to meet with a bunch of high rollers on this issue because they're so passionate about it.
That is so great. Excellent. I love hearing your preparations for that, to take advantage as much as we can. It's not looking to the future or what might happen. It's taking advantage of what God has given us right now. That's fantastic. Amen. Before we close, I know you have a particular heart and burden for those who are leading Christian schools. We cover a wide variety of topics here on the podcast, and most of them are dealing directly with the classroom management, teachers, things like that. I wondered if you could take just a minute as we close out and share with those who are listening who are school leaders. You do teaching, you do training on leadership. Do you have anything you could share with them as a means of encouragement and challenge as we wrap up today's show?
Absolutely. So everything rises and falls on leadership in schools. Right. There's no doubt about it. I wish there was another way, but it's the way God has chosen. And, when I read the Bible, I'm a student of leaders in the Bible. I'm fascinated by them. There's not a one of them, except for maybe Joseph, who we don't get to see their warts, bumps, and bruises, to be honest with you. And Moses, I spent a lot of time thinking about the life of Moses. And, he just had all kinds of interesting things happen that we can learn from. It's actually encouraging to me because, he had those times where, God says, go back to Pharaoh. And he goes, and earlier it says he was, great in word and deed and all this stuff. But by the time he's been on the backside of a desert for 40 years, he says, I can't speak well. It's interesting. It's interesting. Maybe he lost his ability in those years. But, he was like complaining to God. And so God gives him Aaron and, this whole thing. Well, we get down, after hanging out for 40 years in the wilderness or running around with those kind of people who were causing trouble nonstop. We get down to Numbers chapter 11, 1 through 17, and I think there's so much there for us. And I don't have time to read the whole passage. I wish I did. But this is when the people were complaining. They were throwing a fit. They weren't happy. They weren't getting the right kind of food. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. Why did you bring us out here? And Moses is exasperated with them, and God is furious with them as well. So let me just give a definition of my definition of spiritual leadership. And I think it came from Henry Blackaby, and he and his son wrote a book on spiritual leadership. And if I remember right, this is where I got that. They gave the definition of spiritual leadership as moving people onto God's agenda. And I love that because that can be a Christian school leader getting their faculty and staff onto God's agenda, their students, their parents, their donors. It can be a businessman. You have a company. You want to move your people onto God's agenda, so you're serving people in the way that God would be pleased. So I love that definition of spiritual leadership. But there's just 4 or 5 things here. I won't go into detail. Sometimes I give this as a whole speech. But first of all, I notice in this story of Moses that leading people onto God's agenda has never been easy. It said, and the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. So as heads of school, I know that we dream of utopia, that if we could just get all the right teachers and all the right administrators, all the right coaches, and, we wouldn't have to worry about all these complaints. Well, I don't mean to discourage anybody who's in leadership at a school today, but just get over the idea that there is a perfect school somewhere, and that, you're going to get somewhere someday where nobody's complaining. Now, here's the deal. If you're doing things well, if you're training your leaders, you're hiring good leaders, godly people who want to learn and grow, you can have a strong, positive school culture. There's no doubt about it. And you should seek for that. But to think that you're ever going to get to the place where everybody stops complaining, it's just not going to happen.
No,
it's not
going to happen.
If God called Moses to put up with that, he's probably going to call us to put up with it. So don't be devastated. Don't question your own leadership, because you don't have a perfect team. You're never going to have that. Mm-hmm. So they've been complaining and discontented at the beginning of time. They're not going to stop now. I noticed that even God gets angry with the people we have to lead. It says, and when the Lord heard their complaining, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some outlying parts of the camp. So if God gets angry with the people that we have to lead, we're going to get angry. We're going to get frustrated. The Bible does say, in your anger, do not sin. So you can't be screaming, yelling, hollering at your employees, even though we've all shut the door sometimes, and I like to yell at them. I'd like to let them have it right now, but I know I'm too smart to do that. And occasionally we do kind of lose our cool as leaders and say something a little aggressive. Well, let me just say this. If you do that, be humble enough to apologize.
Right.
Yesterday, me and two of my guys went and met with a very large donor of ours who gave us a wonderful gift yesterday by God's grace. And this was the 7th year in a row that the three of us have gone to this guy's headquarters and sat down with him. That's all he wants. He wants one meeting a year. He wants a full report, and then he gives us money. Well, afterward, I said to my top donor development guy, who has really grown into something fantastic at this, I said, okay, critique me. Because I was the lead on this. I've been with this guy longer than any of them. I said, critique me. How did I do? And he kind of critiqued me in a way that kind of ticked me off a little bit. And then,
you asked for it.
Yeah, I asked for it. And I didn't get angry, literally. I just said, I kind of got a little defensive and tried to explain. He goes, well, you said you wanted me to critique you. So anyhow, it was super healthy. But anyhow, the fourth thing I noticed is often God calls leaders to save their followers from their own bad decisions. God said he was going to destroy them all. And Moses cried out to the Lord and prayed that he would not destroy them. And it says the fire died down. So when you're leading people, and here's what I've discovered, often maybe it's their performance, maybe it's their character, maybe it's they're kind of self-destructing. And I feel like that the best leaders are those who, rather than throw people away quickly, will work tirelessly to save their employees from their own poor decisions. And that's exactly what Moses had to do here. And so I try to think of it like this. If that was my daughter, I'm dealing with a lady who's working for me and she's really struggling. If that was my daughter, what would I want her boss to do for her? Or if that was my son-in-law, what would I want his boss to do for him? And, occasionally, it's very rare, but we have to let somebody go. And I had to let somebody go, but God helped me to do it in such a loving way that I want you, and I know we're running out of time, but I want you to hear, I texted this person and said, just checking on you. I actually got that person a new job the day that I let her go. God allowed me to make a phone call, because this person was a beautiful, good person. They just were not a great fit for that job.
Sure.
And it was breaking my heart. It was breaking my heart and my team's heart, because we love this person, but it just wasn't. And I'd already given them more time than we had promised them when we told them there's going to be a trial period.
Yeah.
So I sent a note and just said, hey, I'm just checking on you to see how you're doing. And here's what I got back. I was with a client. Now I'm home. I had my first shift last Friday of the new job I got her. Thank you so much for connecting with me with this new company. I've been working, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about me, my brother. I'm so grateful for you and your family. You and Michelle are like family to us. I was quite aware that in so-and-so's mind, that position should be an accountant, but because you recommended me, he was willing to give me a try, which I'm very thankful for. It's a blessing to work with you on the last 6 months. Love you all. I care so much about that person, and then there's much more going on in that I was
Sure.
able to get her another job. And here's what I said to her: to keep you here in a position that you're not a great fit for is actually not doing you well.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so, but anyhow, Moses loved his people. God was going to destroy him because they had sinned, and he stepped in and saved them. Sometimes we want to do that. Let me just bring this to a close real quick. Even the best leaders get discouraged and want to give up and get out. Now, these 4 words are what really made this passage jump at me some time ago. Moses was so discouraged, he used these 4 words. He said, God, 5 words, kill me at once. He was so discouraged that he was asking God to kill him. Now, to me, this is what I love about the Bible. It is so transparent. It's just incredible that Moses, this amazing leader, would be begging God to kill him because the situation his people were in was such a mess. And he felt so desperate. So I want to speak directly to some leader out there right now who's going to listen to this. And I'm telling you, leading Christian schools is tough work.
Yes,
It
it is.
not easy. Just having that many kids in your building for that many hours a week, I mean, you're going to have trouble. You just can't help it. You're shaping the lives of young people. But there are times when all of us as leaders have been so literally discouraged that we just ask God to at least get us out of this situation. And, a number of years ago, I went through a crisis, a terrible crisis. Really right as the early days, I was still pastoring, the early days of RenewaNation. The devil was trying to snuff me out. There's no 2 ways around it. And somebody sinned against my life in a horrible way. And for about 6 months, this is a God's honest truth. I hope I didn't tell this last time, but I don't tell it very often. I actually pretty much asked the Lord to take my life. I wasn't suicidal ever. I didn't think about taking my own life. I didn't want to do that.
Right.
But I was like, Lord, could you give me a heart attack or something? It's so pitiful for me to say this today. I asked the Lord to take my life for about 6 months. And it was just a horrible situation that had come into my world. And thankfully, God doesn't answer most of your prayers, like that. And he had a plan for me. But there's probably a leader listening right now that you're pretty desperate and you're struggling like crazy. And first of all, I want to tell you that I love you. God loves you. And I'm just going to say, Jesus, help the leader who's listening to this right now, who's so desperate. Would you touch him, Jesus? As a matter of fact, I'm going to do something I hardly ever do. If you're in a really tough spot and you need to talk to somebody outside of your world, you send me an email to chairman@renewanation.org, and I'll talk to you personally, and I'll pray with you, okay? So if you're in a desperate position, just know, you're not the first one of the greatest leaders in the history of the world, Moses. He was asking God to take his life. It was so bad. But don't do that. Don't do anything stupid, and don't quit in the midst of your crisis, okay? Get some counsel, get some help, get some strength. There may be a day to leave that position, but don't leave it too early, okay? And I'd really have to wrap this up. Let me give you the cure. I titled The Cure for Hating Your Job in Life. And what was it? God said, okay, we're going to fix this problem. Gather leaders around you. God literally went into practical mode after Moses, like, just kill me. And God said, no. We're going to fix this problem. It says, gather leaders around you. It says, gather 70 men. I say, you got to identify potential new leaders to help you. Train them, because it says, choose elders and officers. These were people that are already trained for leadership. Okay. So you identify new leaders. If you want to not hate your life, you identify new leaders, you train new leaders, and then you trust God to equip them and empower them. Listen, he said in verse 17, God said to Moses, I will take some of the Spirit, and it's a capital S in the Bible, that is on you, Moses, and I will put it on them. So listen, leaders, don't try to micromanage everything and do everything yourself. Find some good people in your organization, train them up, trust the Holy Spirit to equip them, and then last, unleash them. If you don't want to be miserable, you must raise up leaders and let them carry the weight of leadership in your organization. If you're trying to carry it all, if you're micromanaging everything, you're just going to burn out completely. So I like to say it like this: working with a strong team of leaders is the key to building strong and lasting organizations. And so rather than trying to be Superman or Superwoman, gather leaders around you, train them, trust God to fill them with His Spirit and equip them to lead and unleash them, and you'll stop hating your job and your life. So
Wow.
that's my little talk on leadership.
That's fantastic. So timely. I promise you there's someone listening that's them right now, because we've all been there. We've all had those moments. So that's great. Jeff, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share something particular for them as well. For all of our listeners, we'll be sure to include the links in the show notes for RenewaNation, but also so how you can connect with Jeff and his ministry. Be sure to check that out. Jeff and his team, they have a wealth of helpful resources available for you. Whether you're a teacher or a leader, there's so much there for you. Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to be back on the show. It's been great to just kind of check in and get an update on what you're seeing. And again, you've shared just so many great insights, very timely as we're launching into this new semester. So thanks again so much for your time. I know you run a really busy schedule, but thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jenny, and keep up the great work.
Listeners, I appreciate you joining with us as well today. I hope you were challenged as you listened to Jeff. As we wrap up, just a reminder to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to learn more about this show. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and also through His grace working in you. Now, go do what God has called you to do.